In this lesson, we are going to get the controllers to work in our game. So to begin with, I'm going to expand here on the origin, and we already have one tracking object, one tracking volume, which is the head mounted display. We want to have two controllers. So I'm going to go here and add an empty object for each one of the controllers. So I'm going to add two empty objects. I'm going to name one of them left and the other one right. So these two objects are going to be the tracked objects for our hand controllers. So what I need to do next is select, let's start with left, select left and go to add component here and find the component named SteamVR tracked object. So I'm going to select that component, and in index I'm going to select none. So I'm not going to give it the head mounted display index that was there by default, and I'm not going to select a device because that is assigned automatically for you. So there is this field here origin, so I'm going to drag my origin object to that field, and I'm going to do the same thing for right. So I can just delete right and just create it again and just rename it right. And just to show you real quickly how this works, I'm going to go here and add an inside object. Let's do a sphere for the left, and let's make that sphere a lot smaller than 1, like 0.1, 0.1, 0.1. And for the right one, I'm gonna go and add something else. Let's do a cube. I'm also going to reduce the size of the cube to 0.1. And now I'm going to select my origin, and I'm going to add a controller, which is going to take care of tracking all of those other elements that we created. So this will be a SteamVR controller manager. So you need to have this one added on the origin, and see how we have sorry, this was the wrong one. Let's this is it, controller manager. So I added test controller by accident, so we need controller manager, and see how we have both left and right fields here. So I can now drag my left controller, place it there, and I can drag my right controller and place it there. And if I now go and press play, and I'm going to make sure that let's do this on maximize on play, and I need to make sure to turn both my controllers on and get the headset over here. We can see that this is one of the controllers and this is the other one of the controllers, and also see how they disappear when I get too close to the camera. So that is because we need to adjust the near clipping plane of our camera, so we need to do that as well. So I'm gonna go now here and press stop the game, and I'm going to expand on the head here, and the head camera is the one that we see on game mode. The eye camera is what you see in the head mounted display. So the near clipping plane is going to be the minimum, or it can be something smaller, like maybe 0.1 perhaps, but I'll just set it all to the minimum and go and press play and try that one more time. So let's get one of the things here, and now I can get it a lot closer to my face basically. So that's how you can add tracked objects, and this could be, instead of a sphere of a cube, it could be any 3D model that you want. It could be a gun or a baseball bat or anything, a flower. So now instead of having the sphere and the cube, I want us to be able to show the HTC Vive controllers. So I'm going to delete those two things, and now on left I'm going to add in here an empty object, and I'm going to call this controller model. And in here in add component, I need to find the SteamVR render model. And this will allow me to see the control itself, and also to have things such as indicating what button is being pressed, for example, or when I'm touching the touchpad, it will show where my finger is placed. So so in here we have to give this a shader, and I'm going to click there, and I'm going to find the standard shader, which is the shader that comes in Unity that you would have used in the past to create materials. So we need that, and that is for one of the hands. So I'm going to duplicate this and place it on the other hand. And now I'm going to go and press play, bring in the headset, and here we go. We've got the controller, and see how I can, for example, press the trigger button, or I can move my finger there on the trackpad. So that is because we are including this component, this SteamVR render component that has access to all of these, gives us all of these features out of the box for us to use. So we didn't have to code the behavior of pressing the trigger, for example. We can just use it directly from this object here that came in the SteamVR plugin. So now that we have the controllers, it would be really cool to be able to hit something or to move something in virtual reality. So what I'm going to do here is let's create a material for the background, for the floor, so it's not white. So I'm going to create a folder called materials, and in here I'm going to create a new material which I'm going to name ground material. So this will be a dark green, and we are going to move that into the scene view. And let's keep these cubes. Let's keep these cubes the way they are. So I'm going to add a component to these cubes, which will be a rigid body. One of them already has the rigid body because I added it before, so I'm just going to add it like so, rigid body in that one, and now they both have a rigid body. So they are just normal rigid bodies in Unity. And what I'm going to do is select them and duplicate them, so we have a few of them near us. And now what I want to do is make my hand controller so that they can push them, because at the moment I can just go through this and nothing happens, but I want to be able to actually move them. So for that we need to give our hand controllers a collider and a rigid body. Let's select both of these models here. So I'm going to give them first of all a collider. So it could be, let's say, a sphere collider, and it can be a very small sphere collider because your hand wouldn't be in here. One Unity unit is 1 meter, so your hand wouldn't be 1 meter, it would be a lot smaller. So we can give this collider a smaller radius. For example, let's choose 0.1 radius, and also they need to have a rigid body. But now the rigid body of our hand controllers shouldn't respond to forces, because the position of our hand controllers is given by the tracked volume, by the tracked object. Basically, your controller is determining the position and the rotation of your model. So this should be a kinematic rigid body. Basically, it won't respond to forces. We will modify its transform directly through the SteamVR render, through the parent object here, tracked objects. So if we now go and press play, we should be able to push this. So we can push these things and we can move them like so. So I guess we should bring them a little bit closer so that we can do this better. But as you can see, we've just pushed it down. And yeah, so let me show you now what would happen if you didn't make them a kinematic rigid body. If they were just normal rigid bodies, they would basically fall with gravity, and they will be just on the floor bouncing around, and you're not going to be able to move them. You are going to be moving just their containing object basically, but the controls themselves are just gone. So because it's behaving like a sphere basically, it went rolling. That is why you need to set this as a kinematic rigid body. So to summarize here, what we did was, first of all, we, inside of our origin, we created all of our different tracked objects. So we already had the head, which is the head mounted display. And now we also had two more tracked objects. Each one of these tracked objects is a controller, and controllers in this platform have 6 degrees of freedom. They can rotate in about all 3 axes, and they can move. They can be positioned across X, Y, and Z. So the origin object here needs to have this controller manager script, which basically tells it, hey, we are going to have 2 hand controllers. This is their location. These are the objects. So we passed on these 2 objects. And these 2 objects themselves, they have the SteamVR tracked object script. And inside of them, whatever you put inside will be moved, because we are moving just the parent here. So as you saw before, I can place a sphere, I can place a cube, I can place any model exported from Blender or from any other program. I can have any 3D model that I want in there. And if you want to have the default controllers of the HTC Vive, you have to add this SteamVR render model script, and then you have to specify the standard shader here. So that's what the whole process was. And if you want these objects to be solid so that you can push other things around, you have to give them a rigid body, a collider first, because you always need a collider for rigid body. And the rigid body is not going to respond to external forces, so it needs to be set as kinematic. It means that we're going to be modifying its transform directly, which is not something we're going to be doing, but the SDKs of the head-mounted display and the controllers will be doing for us. Now, regarding all of these scripts that I'm adding here, all of these components, I don't want you to think of all these things as black boxes that make no sense. Inside of SteamVR scripts, you can find all of these different scripts. So for example, you can go to the tracked controller and you can read through the code. So the code, unfortunately, is not very well commented, if not commented at all, but you at least get an idea of what it's about. And if you don't have to understand all of the code, but at least it will give you an idea of what is happening, or what objects are being called, or how they all relate with each other. For example, the render model is here, and you'll see a few more of the options and a few of the methods. And some of them have public methods that you are able to call from somewhere else. So at first, it's going to be a complex code. There's a lot to it, but don't think of these scripts as black boxes. Have a read at some of this code, and over time, as you are developing more games and you spend more time with this platform, you become more familiar with what the different scripts do, or what works inside of them, and you might even find parts of their code that you can reuse on your own scripts. So that's all for this lesson. I will see you now on the next video.